Hello and welcome to Music in Widescreen. Today I'm here with, I'm going to try the name, Einar Solberg. Is that about
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's how I would say it if I presented my name to English-speaking people.
Okay. You want to give
Yeah,
us the real one then? I don't want to,
no, yeah, Einar Solberg.
Einar Solberg. Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
It's really great to have you here. I've had the pleasure of seeing you perform twice in Chicago. Once
Oh,
with, let's see, it was Leprous and Bettany and Haken, and then again
yeah,
with Between the Buried and Me and Deer Hunter.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
great shows. I feel compelled to ask you this question that that I don't normally ask. How important is music to you? Because when I see you play live, I mean, it's you leave everything on the stage there. It's a real experience. So do you have maybe some information on how much music has meant to you your whole life?
It has meant so much to me because I define myself so much by what I do musically as well, and of course I am more things than music as well, but
Mhm.
but that is definitely what is I think is defining me the most, maybe.
Right.
So for example, whenever like COVID happened, it was just never
Mhm.
a question for me not to do music very actively,
Right.
even though COVID happened. So it was just like, yeah, of course, I will just do something else than what we normally do, because of course you don't have the big crowds watching you or anything, but
Mhm.
that is becoming less and less
Mhm.
important for me over the
Okay.
time, because the music is really what is the main thing for me, the actual music, like to compose, to perform the music, and then you can have a bonus of getting your ego boosted a bit with the crowd here and there, but
Right.
that's not should never be the main goal, I think. So music has had an extremely important role in my life, and before I started doing music, I didn't really have any direction yet in
Mhm.
my life. I was still young, of course, but I was in my like 15 when I
Mhm.
did my first show, and
Right.
then I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I was just like, I don't know. I was typical teenager up to no good, like uh, uh, and the only thing I'd ever tried that I kind of liked doing a little bit at that time was breakdancing, and I wasn't very good at it. Uh, so uh,
Nice.
so 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 at the first show I ever did, which was
Mhm.
in 2000.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, was my first show ever. I remember I felt completely comfortable on stage,
Right.
and I realized, okay, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. And then I've just kind of gone without any plan B ever since then.
It's great because I definitely had a feeling I get an answer like that from you because I mean the shows are so tight and so dramatic, and I make sure to get there a couple hours early so I am right in front, and it's in front of potentially a mosh pit, which
Yeah, yeah,
between the
yeah.
buried and me kind of broke out into one, but
Yeah, yeah. But
uh,
yeah, the only places in the world usually where we get the mosh pit, it's in Chicago for some reason.
well, it was pretty cool actually. Being near it, it seemed like and the closest I've ever kind of been to one. It seems still a very loving. It's not about the I don't know. It's not about anything, any sort of angst or anything. It's about almost community at that point.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I I
I know.
felt good about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think mosh pits, it's a kind of a love hate thing among the crowds. I see some
Yeah.
people are, yeah, this is so awesome. And I see
Yeah.
also quite a lot of facial expression. Oh, stop this! I'm trying to watch the music. It's just like,
Right.
so it's just like, I think it's a very love-hate thing. This mosh pit thing, but it's just like it doesn't happen very often at
Okay.
Leprous shows,
Okay.
because we don't really like, our music doesn't very often
Right.
inspire
That.
yeah,
Yeah. That
that
behavior.
mode.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think that maybe certainly let's make sure I get this pronounced right. Aphelion is probably
mhm.
definitely does not lend itself to that. It seems to be a little bit more melodic maybe than your past albums. There's only growling vocals at the end, and I was for sure thinking as I'm listening to the album, not watching the player, that On Hold was going to be the final track. It's got this kind of nice kind of ending at it. I'm like, okay. And then they found out, oh, it's only the eighth of 10th track. Did
Yeah.
the running order, was that ever in doubt? Or it seemed a little,
Yeah, of course,
okay.
but we just did this album really like song by song and
Right.
day by day. Basically, it wasn't any plan for any
Okay.
consistency for this album whatsoever, because it was just like, it was a very intuitive album that we just decided to do, and then we just build it kind of track by track,
Right.
and it was a more kind of relaxed atmosphere than what we've ever had before.
Yeah.
And but then it was more about like, if Nighttime Disguise was not on the album,
Right.
then On Hold would probably be the last song. But
Okay.
for us, it's just like Nighttime Disguise was the obvious closer.
Okay.
There was just like, there is no doubt for us that that's going to be the closer. So what we knew was the opening track and the closing track, and then
Really?
everything else was just like. And actually, what is interesting is that On Hold was written originally for Pitfalls.
Okay.
And you can kind of hear that a bit in the style and the sound that the song has.
Right.
And we were super satisfied with that song. We loved that song from the get-go.
Mhm.
And but we felt there wasn't any space for it on Pitfalls due to Distant Bells already being there. And
Okay.
Distant Bells is also such a slow build song,
Right.
that it's gradually building and building and becoming bigger and bigger. And we felt there was not space for two long,
Right.
slow build melancholic songs in one album. So, and then you have it, like On Hold has a relatively hopeless vibe and atmosphere, and it's quite sad song.
Mhm.
Whereas the next song, Castaway Angels, has a lot more light in it, and then you just end up with being pissed off in the end at Nighttime Disguise, which we
Right.
also actually did on Pitfalls. We also had the most aggressive song in the end there.
At the end. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that the criteria for what the last track should be? You're like, okay, this is very aggressive, but this is like a climactic ending for you because of how that track ends in particular?
Not at all. It was just like, it was the only place we managed to make it fit, actually.
Okay.
So that song, we didn't plan to write that song. Like with many of the other songs, there was no plan in,
Right.
like, because that's the song that we wrote together with our fans in the studio in almost week-long live stream. So with the fans that helped us setting the parameters, or
Mhm.
helped us is not the right word, they challenged us
Right.
with setting the parameters for the song, and we had done nothing when we started, so we kind of just built that song while having almost this big brother camera vibe during the whole week. And everybody was watching everything we did, basically, of the people who had bought tickets for that stream. and
Right.
um, and uh, and we just had to follow exactly the parameters that they had voted for, which was kind of the time signature, the instrumentation, the
Right.
vocal techniques, the many different things. So which was just a really fun experiment we wanted to do with one track. So when we went into the studio recording that track, it's just like, okay, but worst case, it will be a silly silly bonus track,
Right.
worst case. And then the worst thing that can happen is that we had fun and the song didn't end up becoming cool. But I actually think the song ended up becoming cool. So yeah, that's the reason for that. It's more aggressive. It's just like it was one of the parameters. I mean, I don't know if we would have done it ourselves. I don't know. It's just like I definitely have aggression in me, but it has to come naturally and not just like, okay, now we're gonna do some fucking metal and just like, I don't know, some crowd pleaser aggressiveness is not really our thing to do normally. So it was just like to make it fit into that concept, basically.
Right. Well, it's amazing. I mean, it speaks to that you did like the song. You thought it was the obvious ender, and you do have 2 bonus tracks, and it didn't end up there. So I think that you had good input. That seems like a very scary thing, but at least you had a plan B. If you didn't really like it, you could have made it a bonus track or done something else with it. Because that sounds very scary. We have a saying that you may have heard, an idiom called "too many cooks in the kitchen," and that could have been a scenario for that.
For sure. But we have like we've been working together for quite many years with Leprous, and I, when it comes to composition, I always, usually, except a few songs here and there, I usually always take on the leading role on kind of gluing everything together. And then Bard and Robin on that project, they took more of a leading role on the rhythmical details and the kind of more detailed level, where I was kind of looking more at the big picture. So it was just kind of a good way of working together. And everyone in Leprous are very focused while we're working, usually, that we're just like, okay, we have a clear goal and work towards that. And as I'm saying, like, there isn't anything scary about trying something, and that's what I say to everyone. It's just like, the worst thing that can happen is just, okay, it wasn't a success. At least you're one experience richer, like you probably learned something from it anyway. So but yeah, I have to admit that I liked the song, despite that I didn't expect to do so.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to another question I had for you. Because of COVID and other maybe factors, you recorded this at 3 different studios. Is that something that you would fear to do less? Do you feel like it can you tell the difference? I don't have an ear to be able to tell the difference that this was done in 3 different studios. Has that opened up the possibility of doing that again, or is that always going to be a plan B scenario for you?
No, it wasn't like it was a plan B, really, because we didn't have a plan on doing an album. So it was just like every plan A in the world stopped existing. So so basically, you had to just create new plan A's. Basically, it's not like it was it's not like you actually had maybe there will come a pandemic, so that we will have to go with our plan B. It doesn't work. Nobody was expecting that thing to happen. It just happened, and then you just adapt and you find something to do about it. So the reason why we went for 3 different studios was that we couldn't any longer go to our studio in Sweden because of travel restrictions. And Sweden, they chose a kind of a much more open strategy in the beginning than what the rest of Europe did, more or less. It was like Sweden and England, I think, that was like very that had this strategy. So Sweden was like a really no country for Norwegians to go to. We were not allowed to for a long time because they chose a different strategy than we did. And so we kind of just like, okay, but we had planned to do an EP, so we were like, okay, we need to like make at least 1 song more, or 2 maybe. We had already made a couple, like 3 or 4 at that point. And then we went into dialogue with the Ocean Sound Studios in Norway, which we've heard amazing things about. and they also had this like a COVID discount, because it's normally like a really, really expensive studio,
Right.
because it's has the most amazing view and facilities you can imagine for a studio.
Nice.
It's like literally by the oceans, with like huge mountains surrounding it, and like top-notch equipment, great technicians. Like you have a jacuzzi almost in the sea there that you can use. It's like super
Right.
like luxury studio, that we
Right.
normally wouldn't think we could afford. But they had like some good COVID discounts, because they had also lost some customers from abroad, and so we went into there to do the Castaway Angels project. That was just like supposed to be the one-time project. But then we had some more days left after we finishing Castaway Angels, so we decided to kind of make another song from scratch, which was the All the Moments. And that was kind of started out that we kind of just improvised together to make the skeleton there, and then I came back there later to finish it. So, and then at that point we decided, okay, let's actually make an album out of this, because we're starting to have quite a few songs now.
Right.
Too many for an EP. So then we decided that we booked again. We tried a different studio, Sedberg Studio, which we've heard great things about. Just to try something new, to see how that is, and to get some new impulses. And we went there to record Running Low and the drums for a couple of other tracks. And then I just saw this post from Ocean Sound Studios that we have several cancellations now in January or in February. And then I contacted them. Hey, like, and then we just decided to do that project. I just booked it, and we'll make something cool out of it. And it was just like a very intuitive process. Just like there was no big master plan behind any of this with this album. It was just like a very natural, gradual process of having fun and composing music together and recording.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That kind of just came down. It speaks to your songwriting abilities, that you're just able to have a few things in the bank. You had a song that didn't make last album. You've got the EP started getting too long. I find that I end up liking bands that just are writing all the time and always have leftover stuff, and it just it seems to be the way of the elite the elite songwriters. And you mentioned All the Moments, which is a great track. The string arrangements in there just make the track. I really enjoy that. Was that done with extra people, or was that a sample? Or
no, that's like all the strings on this album are real strings.
Yes.
So, but of course, when I compose it, I start using samples in the beginning,
Right.
And then on the biggest sections, we sometimes add a little bit in the background, but usually they've layered it up so many times, the violin player and the cellist, anyway, that we don't need it, because it sounds quite big by itself.
Right.
So if they muted the samples in the background, I'm not sure I would feel a big difference, because it sounded really big as they did it. And that song, as I mentioned it, we just like put together a skeleton in the studio, and just like different sections, separate sections. That wasn't really a complete song at that point. But then I just like had some vision in my head about what I wanted to do with it later, and then I just the studio guy sent me all the separate sections, and then I went home. That was mainly just guitar, drums, and bass, and kind of rhythm guitars, and no lead guitars at that point.
Right.
And I just put the puzzle together and made it into a song, and added those strings that you were talking about, and also put a long break in the middle there that I was going to do, where I was going to put the second verse, where I had the plan to do completely improvised piano, where like it's completely free and improvised piano in free tempo, where I just kind of glue the song together with the keeping the same vocal lines as on the first verse, except for that everything else was different. And of course it's in minor key and the first verse is in major, but except for that it's the same vocal line. So that's kind of so I think that song is kind of the perfect example for that method of working that we had during this process, that was just very intuitive and very open and just very playful, basically.
Right.
So compared to before, and a
So
bit more fearless than before.
right. I was kind of wanting to ask you a little bit about kind of how the band got together, kind of your origin story, because I'm very late to the party. I found out about you guys when I saw From the Flame, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this guy is playing keyboards, singing falsetto, and headbanging to a 13/16 time signature or something like that. I'm like, I gotta
Yeah,
find out.
it is
Is it
13 16,
13/16?
I
Maybe at
think we
parts.
have it as I think we have it as 13/8, but it depends if you
What you
kind
count
of take. Yeah. If you have half the tempo, then it's 13/6. Yeah.
Right.
So,
And I'm like, this is outstanding. And so can you kind of tell me what it was like? I have an idea what it was like there, because there is a big kind of a, if anywhere, there's a decent sized prog heavy metal community there. But how'd you guys kind of get together and how and do this thing become what you've
uh,
become?
it was such a long process. Like it started out and the very very early stages.
Mhm.
I started in one band when I was 15, which
Right.
wasn't Leprous.
Right.
That was kind of my main band. We were playing like covers of Nirvana and
Metallica, maybe?
no, Rage
No.
Against the Machine,
Okay. Gotcha.
Radiohead. We played some covers
Oh,
of, so it was like and also Sex Pistols. I remember
oh
we
yeah.
played.
Cool.
So basically, just
Quite
whatever
varied.
that was easy enough for us to play.
Right.
Uh, so and then I joined another band, just like because I remember my sister said she's also a musician and she's like 10 years older than me. So she was a grown up and I was a youth at that time. So she said like, yeah, you should like join this other band. They're also like, they also want to have a vocalist now and you can maybe go in there and sing it. And I was, I don't know. Yeah, come on. It's good for you to have some more experience, you know. Okay. And then I
Right.
went in there and that was like kind of my second band. But then that main band, they decided to quit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of stuck with that second band. And we started together. And the band was called PUX. That doesn't really mean anything in any language.
Okay.
I don't know why they were called that. And then I just asked after a while Thor to join,
Okay.
because we wanted to have one more guitar player. And just quite shortly after that, we decided to call the band Leprous. So
Yeah. And the
and
guys, how many guys of the lineup were in there at the time? Is that
the
everybody now?
zero.
Okay.
No, none of them. We have had an insane amount of lineup changes over the
Okay.
years.
Okay. That's
They are like two of those guys. They are having their own like country rock band here in
okay.
my hometown now. So they don't do any rock or metal anymore. But
Yeah. Okay. But was that a lineup that did the first album? Are we kind of at
no,
Leprous
no,
at
no,
this
no, no,
point?
no, no,
No,
no.
huh? Not even that.
This was in 2001,
Okay, so 4 years
and
before that.
no that so our first album came out in 2009.
Oh,
Our
nine.
first like
Oh,
real like debut
okay.
album. So then
Gotcha.
it was just like a gradual process with lots of
Okay.
changes. People were quitting, and then we did our first demo in 2004.
Uh-huh.
Mm, that was our first recordings, and that was only actually, yeah, there was already some changes in the band at that point.
Right.
And then it was our second demo. That was a kind of full-length demo, Aeolia, which we actually do sell on our shows,
Right.
On tour.
Right.
And then a few years later came Tall Poppy Syndrome, and at that time we started, around the time when we released Tall Poppy Syndrome, we started playing a bit more around. With the year after, we went on our first support tour.
Nice.
Around Europe, and then kind of we came to that point where it took quite many years of big expenses and no income with the band, and that's when people quit, basically.
So I mean, it happens because you have to get a band. The band not only has to want to put in as much, maybe financially or whatever, come up with a financial plan, but you have to want to rehearse the same amount. You have to record the same amount. You want to have to tour the same amount. So we had like a relatively steady core there for many years there. Like the bass player of that album quit, but then we had like the same lineup for like 3 albums, more or less, like 3 albums, but with one change. And then we did like quite extensive touring, and then I think it was, and then we released Congregation. One more band member fell off, and Bard came in, who is now like a quite dominant part of the band. Who many people kind of usually knows him better now than our previous drummer, because he's that kind of guy. First of all, he's an amazing drummer, and secondly, he's taking a lot of space. So he's a type of guy you notice. And so he went into the band like it was super serious from the get-go, and gave everything and put it as his main priority. So he quite quickly became a part of the core of the band. And then just not that long after, Bård came into the band, Øystein, who had been in the band since 2005, quit in 2016 due to difficulties with keeping up with his work and family and everything. And it was kind of hard to keep up. And then we got and then Simon had just got into the band, who is a part of the band now, but he just came in as a session member because we didn't have a bass player at that point. And then he just gradually faded into becoming a permanent member of the band. And then after Øystein quit, came Robin, and then we have Leprous of today. So Robin didn't come before 2017, and Leprous started in 2001. So it's been a long process. But now we've had now this is the 3rd album with the same lineup, and I think it's a record actually. Well, I didn't know about how the name and you are the only 2 things that are from the beginning. You were the only guy in the band when the name happened. You know what I'm saying?
No, it was me and Toro. And Toro.
Okay, the guys are both there.
So Tor, So Tor has been a friend of mine since I've known him since kindergarten, actually.
Wow, that's awesome! And you got into this together but remained friends. That's awesome. So because there are some guest artists on here, would if you do play some live shows, which I believe you are, can maybe the home crowd expect to see maybe more people on stage for maybe those string arrangements and other things? I mean, go ahead.
I mean, Raphael is always, as you've probably seen on both the shows you've seen, he was a part. So Raphael is the cello player. He's like, I think if he lived in the same country, or at least the same continent as we do, I think people would see him even more. It would be a member. I'm quite sure. But and Chris, like I've talked about it with Chris, the violin player, many times, that it would be, but he's kind of busy with bent knee, so he plays violin in bent knee. And that's how I got to know him on that US tour with Haken, actually. And he just sent me an email after, hey, if you ever need some violin, I'm game.
All right,
I'm up for it. So
that's cool.
So yeah. So
it seemed like everybody had fun. And I will mention about that other tour with Between the Buried and Me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people were there to see you. I mean, you were up first, so I'm going to say that most people were there to see Between the Buried and Me. But you converted a lot of people into Leprous fans on that show. They were hungry for what you had to offer. It was such a good show in Chicago.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And that was the first show on the tour, actually, at the House of Blues, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. That was the first show I remember. We know the Between the Buried and Me guys really well, and we're really grateful to be a part of that tour, because we've done, I think they're probably the band we've done the most shows with, because we did a huge European tour with them and David Townsend at some point, and then we did that really long US tour with them as well. So they become really good friends, and we kind of keep in touch. At least I talk quite often with here and there with Tommy, the vocalist, with them, and they're so I would say that tour for us was super valuable for breaking into the American market, basically, which is a kind of a different market. At that point, we already were quite self-sufficient in Europe. In Europe, so we already could pull good crowds in Europe at that point. But I think so that tour was awesome, and then we got to follow up the same year to go on this co-headliner thing together with Haken. So it was 2018 was a great year for us, and building our name in the United States.
I think your live album was even recorded in the United States, right? Isn't it in New York somewhere? I can't remember the name.
No, actually, it sounds like it's because it's Rockefeller Musical.
Gotcha.
But it's in Oslo.
Well, I think I'm good here with the questions. But I do want let's plug this album a bit here. Do you know sometimes I ask bands this, they don't know the answer. So do you know what formats it's out on? I believe it's on a vinyl that comes with CD, and a CD with a special booklet. I think I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, there is a vinyl, like different ones, different colors.
Okay.
Then there is, and I think usually the vinyl also comes with a CD. It's typical for Century Media, our label, and and then I believe that it is a regular just jewel pack, and then there is the media book
CD. Yes, okay, that's what I see. I just found it now.
And the media book is just with 2 bonus tracks plus more pages in the booklet, and just a bit nicer looking package, basically.
And does it come with lyrics? I mean, I got the lyrics actually from the label. Is it? Do you know there's a lyric book in there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And is there I don't see anything about a tour here on your sheet here. Is there a tour planned? At least
we had 2 tours planned. Like first one in 2020, then one in 2021. But we all know how then what happened in those 2 years, so we are very cautious with announcing stuff until we kind of. But there is definitely we didn't get to tour the United States for Pitfalls even, so it's just it's a I would say it's maybe a main priority for us to come back to whenever we can. So, but so let's see how it goes with this Delta virus.
I know the variant here, especially the Aphelion is very kind of it's not like sunshine and rainbows. It's a very dark album. We want you to have some good experiences, maybe to have maybe a little bit more uplifting lyrics. Already Aphelion. Well, maybe we don't want that really. It never worked for Steve Wilson. Never was a problem Wilson to have dark lyrics. But Aphelion is already, was that a metaphor for anything? I'll ask you one last question. because it is.
Yeah.
It is. So I had to look it up, right? Aphelion is, I believe, the furthest from the sun a meteor or some other object gets. So
Yeah, basically. So it's just a metaphor for being as far away from the light as you can be, but still being able to go on with your life and doing something about it, basically, which refers very much to the COVID times we've been
right.
all been in. So it's about being able to adapt despite the lack of light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So yeah, that's it. And when it comes to like a feeling and the theme there, it is dark, kind of, but there is a lot of hope there too, if you pay
Right.
attention.
Right.
So it's not like an overall super dark album, because that was my intention, was more to kind of enlighten certain problems, but also enlighten how to potentially deal with those problems. So it's not like look at how difficult everything is for me type of album,
Right.
but it's more like, hey, this is how you can potentially maybe deal with these sort of issues or these sort of issues. And so I feel it has, even though it's dark and melancholic, it has a certain solution oriented approach.
Right. And that's always a great thing to have, if people are dealing with issues, it's always good to have a mechanism to deal with those situations. And
Exactly.
right. So, well, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to let everybody know that if you want to find out more about Leprous, check out leprous.net, or you can go to facebook.com/leprousband. And Einar, it was so great to have you here for a little bit.
But yeah, the only places in the world usually where we get the mosh pit, it's in Chicago for some reason.